Joining us now, House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee member John Katko. Good evening, Congressman. Wonderful to see you tonight. You know, you watched that soundbite of the president, and he's talking about Americans essentially saying they're stupid, that they don't understand what's going on. If you ask the person next to you, they can't explain the supply chain. My experience has actually been very different, and I'm not talking about other journalists or people in the business communities. People know what's going on out there, and they know that Joe Biden's not doing anything about it.
Yeah, they sure do. And I think that comment is symptomatic of a larger problem with this administration, where they think that they have to make the decisions for the American people and do things for the American people because they're not capable of understanding it. And that top-down arrogance is what is going on in this country. And it's really a shocking attitude to have as a leader. We have major supply chain issues. I'm head of the Republican side of the Homeland Security Committee, and we know that the supply chain is a national security threat. It's not just an economic threat, it's a national security threat. And we saw during the pandemic, and every American saw during the pandemic, how bad it was just to get personal protective equipment and those supply chain issues. And it permeates everything we do. When you're going to buy a car now, you know there's a supply chain issue because there's not enough computer chips out there. And we're trying to fix that. So we understand fully what's going on here, and this administration just seems to think that this top-down dictating policy is what we need, and we just don't need that right now.
Yeah, I want to get to the spending bills in just one moment, but first sort of lay out what the issues really are when it comes to the supply chain, and they're pretty basic, right? We've got labor shortages. That's one problem. We could move the containers to ports that have space, like, for example, in Florida. That's another thing that would help. Less oil supply because of the administration, its policies, more regulations, driving up those costs of fuel, creating problems. These are just some of the issues contributing to the supply chain problem, which leads to the inflation, which leads to the higher prices on the shelves. And so then I'll pivot and talk about these spending bills. Infrastructure passed, but we've still got that other bill, the social spending package the Democrats want to push through. That's going to make all of this worse. And then they sit there and tell the American public, no, you're wrong. You must be confused about that too. That's going to make everything better.
Man, you're spot on, because that's exactly my concern. Listen, the infrastructure bill was a bipartisan bill, came out of the Senate. It got subject to a little bit of the political winds in the House, but in the end, it was a bipartisan package. Even the most powerful Republican in Washington right now, Mitch McConnell, voted for it, along with 19 other Republicans in the Senate. So that was a good bipartisan package, and it's going to be good for the American people, and it is all infrastructure. That other monstrosity is a reconciliation bill. They call it the Build Back Better, and that is what I was talking about earlier with respect to President Biden. They think that the government has to do things for you, and that's the essence of that bill. But what's also in that bill, which is really frightening, is substantial tax increases.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about something that would affect the supply chain, it's tax increases on businesses and individuals who create jobs. Because when they can't afford to do business here, they go across the pond or they go overseas. You know, several years ago in 2017, we did tax reform. When we lowered the taxes for businesses, they came back. The economy was booming, and now they're talking about, in addition to everything else you said, raising taxes, which would further exacerbate the supply chain problem because businesses are going to go back overseas.
Yeah, they sure are. And we were trying to get jobs to come back home during the last administration, making progress there. So we're sort of undoing that. But what's interesting to me is how Nancy Pelosi chose to go about this. She wanted to couple these two packages together instead of voting on the bipartisan bill first. She probably should have done it weeks ago, and then focusing on the human infrastructure, which, you know, really just shows sort of how fragmented the party is right now, how much pressure there is from some of the extreme sides. It is rare that I would agree with Tim Kaine, but I want you to listen to this soundbite because he talks about it on Face the Nation, why it was so important to sort of structure the timing a little differently.
I think congressional Democrats blew the timing. We should have passed these bills in early October. If we had, it would have helped Terry McAuliffe probably win the governor's race. It would have been good for President Biden. But we are going to get these bills done. They're great for every zip code in this country, and I'm really excited to be working on them.
All right. So his overall point is they're going to still keep pushing. What do you think the chances are that that human infrastructure bill will pass with a $2 trillion price tag?
Well, again, to reiterate my point again, he just made my point again. The arrogance of the Democratic leadership is incredible because they got the clock cleaned in Virginia, and in New Jersey was a huge scare for them. And the American people sent a resounding message that they don't want this type of governance. And if you look at the president's polling, it's in the toilet, right? And that's not because he's not a nice guy. It's just because they don't want what they're selling. And we don't want to pick up what they're laying down. And so I think he's wrong on that. I think this reconciliation bill is in big trouble, especially now that moderate Democrats see, okay, we got the infrastructure package done. That gives us some cover to vote against reconciliation. So I wouldn't be shocked to see reconciliation fall by the wayside going forward.
Yeah, and in that last poll, 38% approval rating, that number has dropped. 46% of people said that he's not doing the job that they thought he was going to do. Exactly. Congressman John Katko, good to see you tonight. Thank you.
You too.
All right.